There could be further problem that Chelsea, as the trustees that Roman Abramovich plans to hand over the running of the club to and temporary ownership, consider resigning. Chelsea could descend into chaos, according to reports coming from the Telegraph, including one of the most reliable, if not the most reliable, Chelsea journalist on the planet, Matt Law. Now, we saw towards the back end of last week, Roman Abramovich very much responded to a lot of speculation that he could have Chelsea Football Club seized from him. He could have Chelsea Football Club taken away from him as part of sanctions as the Russia and Ukraine conflict continues to escalate and grow. More of the world gets involved. More and more sanctions are being met. We've already seen Russian teams kicked out of UEFA and FIFA competitions. Russia as a nation are not allowed to compete at the forthcoming international tournaments. That's also being echoed across other sports, and big financial sanctions have happened. I can't speak for any other country, but in the UK against lots of Russian businesses, lots of oligarchs, and lots of billionaires. Chelsea fans were feeling a sense of relief going into the weekend as a very short and concise statement came out that confirmed that Roman was handing over not the full ownership. Let's get it right here. He was handing over the running of the football club. He was taking a complete step back from operations at the football club. Now, what's very interesting is a source at Chelsea told us that that's actually how things have been for a long, long time. Essentially, what happened at the weekend is that they just kind of made it formal that he has a very hands-off approach when it comes to the running of the football club. He is giving stewardship or custodianship to the trustees at the football club. Now, what's very, very key and what's very, very interesting about this is that it does appear, and the reason that this story needs to be taken seriously, I kind of seen where, Matt Law himself has tweeted about this, and when you see how many interactions Matt Law normally gets when he shares Chelsea news compared to this, it tells me there is an underlying worry and concern amongst Chelsea fans. But what they have come out and said that at least 2 trustees have raised a conflict of interest worries, plus the legal view on Roman's plans for the club. The report goes on to say that on Monday, reports claimed that Roman Abramovich was trying to broker peace between Russia and the Ukraine. We'll touch on that a little bit later, following last week's invasion and ongoing war. Despite that, the Telegraph states that Chelsea's trustees are set to have more meetings this week, and some may not remain in place. The reports claim at least 2 of the 6 have raised concerns privately amid suggestions they will be compromised. And I think what's very key, and when I read through this article, there's almost this element of, but is this just smoke and mirrors? Is this just a way of presenting there's new ownership so that Roman doesn't get sanctioned and Chelsea isn't taken away from him? But actually, what else is going on? And when they say being compromised, again, you have to be very, very mindful that you've got to read the article. There's an element of interpretation down to it. I think we have to wait again until these meetings to be completed. But I almost feel like some of these trustees, as much as they've enjoyed working for Chelsea, they probably have a tremendous level of respect over the course of years of working with Roman Abramovich. There'll be an element of, well, if you're putting us in charge, we want to run the football club. If you're putting us in charge by name, if we're just a proxy leader, but you're still controlling things, you're kind of circumventing the system to ensure you don't suffer any sanctions. For some of those trustees, that is what I believe they think they could be compromised in. You're then part of a, you're kind of part of a process which is circumventing the rules. Certain people won't want their names connected to that. If indeed the government gets tough and turns around and says, I don't care that you've made this change of structure internally, you are essentially still running the football club, there's a sanction. Everybody that's helped prop it up, who knows what the government's going to do? Let's have this right. I'm no expert on what the government is ever going to do. But when it comes to war, corruption, anything along these lines, they could incite anything. So I completely understand why some of these board members are worried right now. And Chelsea fans kind of echoed that sentiment towards the end of last week. I saw a lot of tweets and a lot of thoughts from Chelsea fans, which was like, basically saying like Roman's kind of, what's the word I would use for it? Roman's kind of bent the rules to get around this. He's kind of finessed it a little bit to make this play. Roman knows what he's doing. He's a smart guy. a lot of videos I saw from myself and even Chelsea fans on socials where we spoke about him stepping down or stepping aside or leaving the club. No, he hasn't left. He's just like handed over temporary stewardship. He's still running things behind the scenes. So Chelsea fans in their own selves are like, we ain't really going anywhere. Maybe the board members feel very, very similar to that indeed. There is a feeling that the foundation in its current setup is inappropriate. More talks will take place this week, and there is recognition within Chelsea that with the 6 trustees will asked to run the club in Roman's absence may not remain in place. And I think that's very, very key. This was obviously an extract from the Telegraph's piece from Absolute Chelsea. Is the setup inappropriate? And in terms of that, are we proxy leaders is essentially what is being said. Now, it's also important to remember is the same sources from the Telegraph with the people that are source independent of Roman Abramovich and Chelsea said that the move of Roman Abramovich helping with peace talks is not a public relations stunt, and that it comes from the strong connections in the international Jewish communities. And I think this is something that also needs to be highlighted on, and I wanted to touch on the fact that Roman does appear, according to these sources, to be trying to help resolve the conflict. And I think this is very, very key indeed. And I feel like at the moment there is this kind of like big paintbrush, and we're painting every single Russian person with the same brush. Every single Russian person is bad. Any Russian that's a billionaire must have done something wrong. Every Russian who's an oligarch or owns a business must be supporting what the Russian government and Putin is doing. And I think we'd be idiots to believe that. I think we'd be idiots to think that, I've even seen footage of, and again, I don't know how verified this is, but of Russian people protesting what's going on. So I think it's very, very key to keep an open mind in this, because none of us are experts. None of us know exactly what's going on. Reserve that judgment. Wait for the, wait until you can see the wood for the trees. Wait for the dust to settle in certain elements of this. And there certainly seems to be a lot of strong reports. But the reason why, the only thing I find confusing from certain Chelsea fans is ignoring the fact that some of the trustees are not happy with how this looks and how it feels and the setup, but they want to discredit the newspapers that are sharing that news. But yet they spread the Roman is seeking peace talks from the same source, from the same newspaper, and they push that news out there. I think it's important to remain focused on everything in this regard. There is going to be a lot of pressure. Don't get me wrong, there is going to be a lot of pressure placed upon the government, placed upon the footballing authorities to look at Chelsea, and don't expect this to not spread to other clubs. And the reason that I think, and let me start this from the beginning of that sentence again. We don't know what's going to happen with Chelsea. I think anybody that's making sweeping, unyielding, cast iron statements of Roman won't lose the ownership, I think it's wrong to state that at this time. It could end up being true, but I think it's wrong to push that notion out there. Most journalists and experts are not doing that. At the same time, rival clubs, some are pushing for this. Oh, Roman loses ownership. Chelsea might get a bad owner. It takes Chelsea out of our way. We can progress. Slippery slope. And I say this word. There are many articles now being published. Here's one from The Guardian that says only now football is beginning to wake up to the stench of its own money. Go and seek that article. Go and read that article. It's a very wordy and in-depth article, so I'm not going to read it all out now. It's multiple paragraphs long. But it is essentially looking at the fact and challenging, again, at what this journalist here will say at the right time, the ownership structures of these football clubs, where the money is originated from. What tends to happen in these circumstances historically, not just in football, but across the spectrum, is when you get a big example, a big precedent set, i.e., let's say Roman does get sanctioned. Let's say Roman does lose his ownership of this club. Certain people will push for it to happen to other football clubs, to Newcastle perhaps, to Man United perhaps, to any club where somebody can connect the money to either a corrupt or immoral process. Everyone will have a different take on what is and isn't immoral, but they will push for it. So it's one of those moments again where I implore rival fans to keep their powder dry and to stay quiet for a period of time, because what you push for to damage Chelsea could end up damaging you in future. Now, some of you may agree with this and go, actually, we should clear out all dirty money from football. Maybe, maybe, maybe. But what you consider to be dirty money, immoral money, may differ from the next person. Until we get a carpet a carpet rule that's almost universally understood to be what is and isn't acceptable, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I, for one, I'm not going to overly condemn anything Chelsea are and are not doing at this time, including their ownership, because I don't know all the facts of the matter. At the same time, I'm not pushing for people to have their club season taken away from them until we understand exactly how far this could go. I think it's brilliant that Roman Abramovich is out there trying to help broker, these peace deals, using his power and his influence and his money for good. But let's all wait and see what happens here. What I would say to Chelsea fans is do not bury your head in the sand, because this situation in terms of your ownership is very much not done and dusted as of now. But do me a big favor. I want to hear you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your feelings. Leave me your comments below. I want to know what you're feeling about this. Until next time, people, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And see you all soon.